Matt walked down the sidewalk, rubbing his neck, still damp with sweat from his workout. The basketball game at the local gym was scheduled to start in an hour, but the team from the next neighborhood hadn't shown up, and the coach had declared victory by default. The Omaha, Nebraska sun was blazing down even in mid-June, and the asphalt beneath Matt's sneakers felt like a hot frying pan. His backpack was slung over one shoulder, and the new album he'd downloaded the day before was blasting through his headphones. He was tall and skinny, with tousled brown hair, and looked like a typical suburban kid walking home from school or practice. "Hey, Matt!" someone shouted from across the street. Matt pulled out one earbud and squinted. It was Trevor, the boy next door, a year younger, skateboarding with his ever-present can of energy drink in hand. "What, lost again?" Trevor grinned, balancing on the board. No game today," Matt said, not slowing his pace. "The others didn't come. We've won." "Ha, lucky." Trevor made a sharp turn and almost crashed into a trash can. "Listen, Jenny's having a party tonight. Are you coming?" "I don't know, maybe," Matt shrugged. "I need to call Jack. He wants to go to the movies." "Come on, the movie sucks." "Come, it'll be fun," Matt just chuckled. Trevor always talked about parties, but half the stories he told were exaggerations. He put the earphone back in and quickened his pace. The house was not far away now, a neat two-story cottage with white siding and a manicured lawn, typical of their neighborhood. Matt had lived there all his life with his parents, William and Catherine, and his younger sister, Abby, who was barely 10. William owned a small chain of auto repair shops, and Catherine was a librarian at the local high school. An ordinary family, nothing special. He turned onto his street, spotting Mrs. Clark, an elderly neighbor, digging in a bed of roses. She looked up and waved a garden trowel at him. "Matt, hi, how's school going?" she called, wiping her forehead with the back of her hand. "It's okay, Mrs. Clark," Matt replied, slowing down. "School's out, it's just basketball now." "Well done, you're doing sports. Tell your mom that I'll come by in a few days. I have a book for her." "Yeah, I'll tell her," Matt nodded, although he knew he'd probably forget. Mrs. Clark always brought Catherine some old novels, which she politely accepted but never read. He walked the last few meters to the house, pulled his keys out of his backpack, and opened the front door. It was cool inside, the air conditioner humming quietly. Matt kicked off his sneakers at the door, dropped his backpack on the floor, and headed toward the kitchen, wishing for a cold soda. The house was quiet. Abby was probably at a friend's house, and his parents hadn't returned from work yet. William usually stayed late in the workshop, and Catherine sometimes stayed in the library sorting books. "Anyone here?" Matt called out, just in case, opening the fridge. No one answered. He pulled out a can of Coke, took a big swig, and, still wearing his headphones, went upstairs to his room. He needed to change and call Jack, his best friend, to decide what to do that evening. The stairs creaked under his footsteps, as they always did. There were 3 bedrooms on the second floor, his, Abby's, and his parents', plus a bathroom. The door to Abby's room was ajar, and Matt caught a glimpse of her pink curtains and scattered toys. His own room was at the end of the hall, but as he passed his parents' bedroom, he noticed that the door was slightly ajar. It was usually closed, and that caught his attention. Matt slowed, pulled out his headphones, and listened. Muffled voices were coming from the room, a woman's and a man's. He frowned. Mom was home, but why so quiet? And whose was that other voice? William's voice was low and husky, but this one was softer, unfamiliar. Matt stepped closer, pushed the door a little harder, and it swung silently open. What he saw made him freeze. On the bed, in his parents' bedroom, lay Catherine. Next to her was a man not William. A stranger, about 40 years old, with short dark hair, leaned toward her, whispering something. Catherine laughed, her hand on his shoulder. They did not notice Matt, too busy talking to each other. Matt felt the blood drain from his face. His heart was pounding so hard it felt like it would jump out of his chest. He wanted to scream, to run, to do anything, but his feet were rooted to the floor. This was his mother, the woman who had made him sandwiches for school every morning, who had held him close before bed when he was younger, and she was here with some strange man in their house in their bedroom. "Kat, are you sure we're alone?" the man asked, his voice low and slightly husky. He ran his hand through her hair. "Yeah, Abby's at a friend's and Matt's training until tonight," Catherine replied, her voice soft, almost playful. "Relax, Paul." Paul. Matt repeated the name in his head. He didn't know any Paul. A co-worker from school, maybe. Someone from her book club. But it didn't matter. She was cheating on her father. His father, who came home tired every night, but always found time to ask Matt how his day had been. William, who was probably in the shop right now, fixing someone's car, unaware of what was happening in his own home. Matt clenched his fists, his nails digging into his palms. He wanted to rush in, to shout for them to stop, but something stopped him. Maybe it was the fear that it would make it real, or the shock that paralyzed him. He took a step back, trying not to make a sound, but the floorboard creaked telltale. Catherine's head snapped up. Her eyes met Matt's, and her face went pale. She pushed Paul away and sat up, pulling the sheet up over herself. "Matt," she breathed, her voice shaking. "Oh my God, Matt, what are you doing here?" Paul turned around, his eyebrows raised, but he didn't look particularly alarmed. He straightened his shirt and stood up from the bed, looking at Matt with mild curiosity. "Is this your son?" he asked Catherine, as if discussing the weather. "Shut up, Paul," she hissed, not taking her eyes off Matt. "Matt, look, it's not what you think. Please, let me explain." Matt shook his head, his throat tight and unable to speak. Explain? What was there to explain? He had seen it all with his own eyes. His mother, the woman he thought was perfect, was with another man in their home. He turned and ran for the stairs, ignoring her screams. "Matt, wait, please come back." Catherine jumped up, but he was already running down the steps, almost tripping. He grabbed his backpack without even putting on his shoes and ran out of the house, slamming the door so hard that the glass rattled. Out on the street, he ran, not paying attention to where he was going. His sneakers were in the hallway, and his bare feet slapped the sidewalk, but he didn't notice the pain. The same image kept playing in his head. Catherine and this Paul, their laughter, her hand on his shoulder. Matt ran until his lungs burned and his legs gave out. He stopped somewhere on the edge of the neighborhood, out of breath, and only then realized he was at the old park where he and Jack had played as kids. He sat down on the bench, his head in his hands. The can of Coke he hadn't finished sitting next to him, warm and forgotten. Matt looked at his bare feet, covered in dust, and tried to figure out what to do next. Should he tell his father? But William was sick lung cancer, diagnosed 6 months ago. Chemotherapy was wearing him down, and Matt could see how he was trying to hold on for his family. If he found out, it would kill him. Should he keep quiet? But how could he live with that, knowing his mother was lying to them all? "Hey man, are you okay?" a voice said. Matt looked up. An older man in a tattered baseball cap was walking a shaggy dog. The dog, some kind of mongrel with a mangy tail, nuzzled Matt's leg. "Yeah, fine," Matt muttered, looking away. "Just sitting." "You look like your world has ended," the man said, sitting down on the edge of the bench. "Want some advice? Whatever happens, don't keep it to yourself. Talk to someone. Mom, dad, a friend, anyone." Matt just nodded, not wanting to explain. The man shrugged, tugged on the leash, and he and the dog walked away. Matt was left alone, looking at the sunset sky. His phone vibrated in his pocket, a text from Jack. "Yo, what are you doing? Movie at 7, let's go." Matt looked at the screen but didn't answer. He couldn't pretend everything was okay now. Instead, he stood up, picked up the can, and walked slowly home. His legs ached, but he didn't care. He needed to go back, if only to get his shoes and backpack. And then, he didn't know what would happen next. It was dark when he got to the house. The lights were on, and Matt noticed his father's car in the driveway. William had returned. Matt paused at the door, hesitant to go in. What if Catherine was there? What would he say to her? Or worse, what would she say? He took a deep breath, turned the knob, and stepped inside. William and Catherine were sitting in the living room. William was leafing through a newspaper, and Catherine was holding a cup of tea, her face pale but calm. She looked up when she saw Matt, and her lips twitched. "Matt, where have you been?" William asked, lowering the paper. His voice was tired, but there was no anger in it. "We were worried. Where are your sneakers?" Matt looked at Catherine. Her eyes were pleading, almost desperate. Shesh shook her head slightly, as if asking him not to speak. Matt swallowed the lump in his throat and turned to his father. "Sorry, Dad. I was just out walking and forgot the time," he said, trying to keep his voice from shaking. "My sneakers. I left them at the entrance." William frowned but nodded. "Okay, but next time warn me. Go get changed. Dinner's soon." Matt nodded silently and headed for the stairs. As he passed Catherine, he felt her eyes on his back, but he didn't turn around. He went up to his room, closed the door, and sat on his bed, staring at the wall. Matt sat on his bed, clutching his phone, which he still hadn't unlocked. His room, with its basketball posters and cluttered desk, felt cramped, like the walls were closing in. He could still hear Catherine's voice, begging him to wait when he'd caught her with that man, Paul. The image of them intimately in his parents' bedroom was vivid in his mind, and Matt felt the anger and pain warring inside him. He'd just lied to his father in the living room, saying he'd just been out for a walk, to explain his long absence. Catherine hadn't spoken, but her pleading eyes said it all. Now he was here, in his room, and he didn't know what to do next. There were sounds from downstairs, a cabinet door slamming, dishes clanking. William was probably watching TV, and Catherine was cooking dinner. Abby, his 10-year-old sister, hadn't returned from her friends yet. Matt threw his phone on the bed and rubbed his face with his hands. He wanted to scream, but instead he just sat there, staring at the threadbare carpet. A soft knock on the door made him start. "Matt?" Catherine's voice was cautious, as if she was afraid he would explode. "Can I come in?" Matt clenched his fists, but didn't answer. He knew she wouldn't leave until she talked. The seconds dragged on, and finally he muttered, "Let's." The door opened slowly. Catherine stood in the doorway, her blonde hair disheveled and her eyes red. She was wearing the same blue blouse she had on that morning, but it looked wrinkled now, as if it had been put on in a hurry. She was holding a tray with a plate of sandwiches and a glass of water. "I brought you something to eat," she said, stepping forward. "You haven't had dinner, and it's almost 9. Matt crossed his arms without getting out of bed. "I'm not hungry." Catherine paused, her lips twitching. She set the tray down on the table next to a pile of textbooks and turned to face him. "Matt, we need to talk. Please, listen to me." "Why?" His voice was sharp. He didn't even try to hide his anger. "I saw everything, Mom. You were with him. What can you say?" Catherine looked down, her fingers fiddling nervously with the hem of her blouse. "I know what you saw, and I know what it looks like. But it was a mistake, Matt. I didn't mean for this to happen." "Mistake?" Matt stood up, his voice rising, but he lowered it quickly, remembering his father was downstairs. "You were with some guy in our bedroom. You cheated on Dad, and this is a mistake." "Please be quiet." Catherine raised her hands, her eyes darting to the door. "Your father mustn't hear. He's in the living room, watching the news." "Of course," Matt snorted, crossing his arms. "You're worried about Dad. What about me? How am I supposed to talk to you now? How am I supposed to look at you?" Catherine took a step closer, but Matt retreated to the window, not wanting her to come. She stopped, her eyes filling with tears. "Matt, I know you're hurt, and I don't blame you for it. But it was one time. One stupid, terrible time. It will never happen again, I promise." "Why should I believe you?" he asked, looking her straight in the eye. "You lied to Dad. You lied to us. How can I be sure you're not lying now?" Catherine covered her face with her hands and sobbed softly. Matt looked at her, but he felt no pity. He wanted her to feel the same pain he felt when he saw her with Paul. She dropped her hands, her face wet with tears. "Because I'm your mother," she said, her voice shaking. "And I love you. I never wanted you to see this. If I'd known you'd come back sooner, I would have. God, Matt, I would have stopped it. But you didn't," he said coldly. "You did it, and I saw it. And now you want me to do what? Forget it?" "I'm asking you not to tell your father." Catherine stepped closer, her voice quieter. "William is sick, you know. The cancer is taking away his strength. If he found out, it would kill him. I can't let that happen, Matt. Not for me, but for him." Matt turned away, looking out the window. Outside, Trevor, the boy next door, was still skateboarding, doing tricks under the streetlight. His carefree attitude seemed so far away. Matt thought about his father, about how William was trying to hold on despite his illness. He had seen his father cough at night, how he was losing weight, but still trying to crack jokes at dinner. The truth about Catherine might be a blow he would never recover from, but the thought of keeping her secret was like a knife in his chest. "Are you asking me to lie to Dad?" he asked, his voice low, almost threatening. "You want me to live with this and pretend everything is okay?" Catherine nodded, her hands shaking. "Yes, I know it's unfair, but I'm begging you, Matt. For Dad, for Abby, if you tell, it will destroy our family." Matt gritted his teeth. Abby, his little sister, adored Catherine, drew her pictures, and asked her to braid her hair. If the truth came out, Abby would lose her mother, maybe her father. Matt couldn't let that happen. But by agreeing, he felt like he was betraying himself. "Okay," he said finally, not looking at her. "I won't tell Dad, but that doesn't mean I forgive you." Catherine exhaled, her shoulders slumping. "Thank you, Matt. I'll do anything to fix this." "Don't," he said sharply, turning to face her. "Just go away." Catherine froze, her eyes filling with tears again. She nodded, turned, and walked out, closing the door quietly. Matt sat down on the bed, his hands shaking. He hated himself for agreeing, but he hated Catherine even more for making him do it. A few minutes later, the door opened again, and Abby came barreling into the room, holding a sketchbook. Her curly hair was in two pigtails, and there was an ice cream stain on her t-shirt. "Matt," she cried, flopping down on the bed. "I'm back. Look, I drew a puppy. It's like Jenny's, only mine is better." Matt forced a smile, even though he was seething inside. "Cool, Abby. Show me." She opened the album, showing a crooked drawing of a dog with huge ears. "I want one like that. Dad said he'd think about it, but that's what he always says. And Mom is acting weird today. Do you know why?" Matt shrugged, trying to keep his voice calm. "Maybe she's tired. She's been in the library all day." "Well, I'll draw her some flowers to make her smile then," Abby said, beaming. "Matt, will you help me with my math tomorrow? I have fractions, and I hate them." "If you don't whine," he replied, patting her head. "Go wash your face, you're covered in ice cream." Abby laughed and ran away. Matt watched her go, his anger mingling with sadness. Abby hadn't known, and he wanted to keep it that way. But now he was caught up in the lie, and that made him complicit. The doorbell rang from downstairs. Matt looked out the window and saw Mrs. Clark, a neighbor, holding a book. Catherine opened the door, and Matt heard their voices. "Catherine, dear, I have brought you the novel I was talking about," said Mrs. Clark, her voice cheerful. "It is very touching. You will like it." "Thank you, Linda," Catherine replied, her tone polite but tired. "I'll definitely read it." "And how is William?" Mrs. Clark continued. "I saw him yesterday, and he looked paler than usual." "He's holding up," Catherine said. "The chemo is tough, but the doctors say he's making progress." Matt turned away from the window. Hearing Catherine pretend to be a caring wife was unbearable. He picked up his phone to text Jack, but instead got a text from Trevor. "Yo, are you going to Jenny's? Everyone's already there." Matt shook his head and threw the phone on the bed. The party was the last thing on his mind. Dinner passed in tense silence. William sat at the head of the table, picking at his chicken and potatoes. His face was pale, but he tried to smile as he listened to Abby chatter about her friend. Catherine sat across from Matt, avoiding his gaze. Matt ate mechanically, not tasting anything. "Matt, are you going to practice tomorrow?" William asked, taking a sip of water. "Is the coach pushing you too hard?" "Fine," Matt muttered. "Tomorrow morning at 10. "Well done," William said. "Sport keeps you fit. When I was your age, I used to run until my knees started creaking." "Dad, can I go to Jenny's tomorrow?" Abby intervened. "She has such a funny puppy." "If you do your homework," Catherine said, her voice quiet but firm. "And don't wave your fork around, Abby." Matt was silent, looking at his plate. He felt Catherine sneaking glances at him, but he didn't look up. After dinner, he volunteered to wash the dishes so he wouldn't be alone with her. Catherine cleared away the remains of the food, and William went into the living room. "I'll help," Catherine said, putting the bowl in the sink. "No need," Matt snapped, not looking at her. "I'll do it myself." She froze, then said quietly, "Matt, I know you're angry, but I want you to know that I'll do anything to make this right." "You can't fix this," he said, scraping the plate vigorously. "Just leave me alone." Catherine left silently, and Matt was left alone, staring at the soapy water. He knew his life had changed forever, and this secret he now carried was only the beginning. Matt woke to the sound of his alarm clock crackling on his nightstand. It was 7 in the morning, and sunlight was streaming through the curtains, casting a pale yellow glow over his room in Omaha, Nebraska. He reached up to turn off the alarm and sat up in bed, rubbing his eyes. It had been a week since he had caught his mother, Catherine, with another man in their bedroom. He had tried to stay away from her since then, but living in the same house and avoiding her completely was impossible. Every time he saw her, he felt a knot of anger and pain inside him. Matt pulled on jeans and an old basketball jersey, grabbed his backpack, and headed downstairs. The kitchen smelled of coffee and burnt toast. Catherine stood at the stove, flipping pancakes in a frying pan. Her blonde hair was pulled back into a low ponytail, and she was wearing a floral apron. She looked like she always did, but Matt noticed that her movements were slower, and the smile she was trying to fake didn't reach her eyes. "Good morning, Matt," she said without turning around. "Are the pancakes ready? Would you like some juice?" "No need," he muttered, opening the refrigerator and taking out a bottle of water. "I'm not hungry." Catherine turned, her hand hovering over the pan. "You didn't eat last night. At least get a couple, the blueberry ones, your favorite." Matt shrugged, avoiding her gaze. "I'll grab a bite to eat at school." He slung his backpack over his shoulder and headed for the door, but Catherine stepped toward him. "Matt, wait." Her voice was soft, almost pleading. "Maybe we can eat together? Abby's still asleep, and Dad's already gone to the workshop. We could talk." "I don't have time," he said coldly, opening the door. "I have practice before classes." Catherine opened her mouth to say something, but Matt was already gone, slamming the door. He walked down the street, anger boiling inside him. She wanted to talk. About what? About how she had betrayed their father? He wasn't going to pretend everything was okay, even if it was for William's cancer that he agreed to keep quiet. On the street corner, he spotted Trevor, his neighbor, fiddling with his bike, putting on a new tire. Trevor was a year younger, with a shock of red hair and perpetually dirty sneakers. "Yo, Matt," Trevor shouted, raising his head. "Why so gloomy? Is the coach bothering you again?" "No, I just didn't get enough sleep," Matt replied, slowing his pace. "Why are you out on a bike so early in the morning?" The chain came off. Trevor wiped his hands on his pants, leaving black streaks. "I want to fix it before school, otherwise I don't feel like walking." "Are you going to practice?" "Yeah," Matt nodded. "If I'm late, Coach will make me run laps." "Ha, I sympathize," Trevor grinned. "Listen, were you at Jenny's party? I didn't see you there." "I didn't go," Matt said with a shrug. "I wasn't in the mood." "No way, it was awesome." Trevor started blabbering about someone spilling soda on the couch, But Matt was only half listening, thinking about his own. He said goodbye and moved on, feeling the morning air calm him down a bit. The school was noisy, with students crowding the hallways, slamming locker doors, laughing. Matt headed to the gym, where the basketball team was already gathering. Jack, his best friend, a tall guy with short black hair, was tossing the ball around the hoop. "Hey, Matt," Jack yelled, throwing him the ball. "Ready for coach to kill us." Matt caught the ball and smiled slightly. "Yeah, same as always. What do we have today?" "Running, defense, shooting," Jack said, rolling his eyes. He was mad yesterday that we screwed up the last game, so hang in there. Matt nodded, throwing the ball back. Practice was the only place he could find a distraction. He ran, jumped, threw, trying to block out thoughts of Catherine. But even here, her face kept popping into his head. The guilty look when he'd caught her with Paul, the way she'd tried to talk that morning. He gritted his teeth and threw the ball so hard it hit the hoop and bounced off the wall. "Hey, easy," Jack laughed. "The ring didn't do anything to you." "Shut up," Matt muttered, but without malice. Jack was the only one he could be himself with, but he didn't even tell him about what he'd seen at home. It was too personal. After practice, Matt changed his clothes and went to class. In class, he sat by the window, looking out at the parking lot where seniors were smoking behind cars. His thoughts kept returning to Catherine. He remembered how she used to be, reading to him before bed, helping him with his homework, laughing at his stupid jokes. Now he saw only lies in her. She cooked, cleaned the house, but to Matt, she was not a mother, but a stranger who had destroyed his trust. He was sitting in the cafeteria at lunchtime with Jack and a couple of other guys from the team. The table was covered with trays of pizza and French fries. Across from him sat Kelly, a girl from their class who was always talking about her cat. "Seriously, he climbed into a pizza box yesterday and got stuck," Kelly said, waving a plastic fork. "I posted a picture. Want to see it?" "Go ahead," Jack said, grinning. "Your cat is an internet star." Matt was silent, picking at his food. Kelly nudged him with her elbow. "Hey, Matt, why are you so quiet? You usually make jokes." "I'm just tired," he replied without looking up. The training was tough. "Oh, don't whine," Jack said, stuffing a piece of pizza into his mouth. "There's a match tomorrow. You need to be in shape. Are you going to Jenny's today? She's inviting everyone again." "I don't know," Matt shrugged. "Maybe." Kelly rolled her eyes. "All you guys know is partying and playing basketball. I'm going to the pet store this weekend to get my cat a new collar." Matt nodded, not paying attention. He was glad the conversation had moved on, but he couldn't stop thinking about home. He knew Catherine would be there when he got back, and he'd have to see her again. After school, Matt lingered in the library, pretending to work on a history project. In reality, he just didn't want to go home. The librarian, Miss Henderson, an older woman with glasses on a chain, was sorting books behind the counter. "Matt, are you staying long today?" she asked, noticing him at the table. "The library closes at 5. "No, I'll be leaving soon," he answered, leafing through the textbook without reading. "Okay, just don't forget," she said, smiling. "And tell Mom that I found that gardening book she asked for." Matt nodded, even though he knew he wouldn't. He didn't want to talk to Catherine about anything, not even books. He gathered his things and left as the clock struck 4:30. The house was quiet. William hadn't returned from the workshop yet, and Abby was sitting in the living room watching cartoons. Catherine was in the kitchen, chopping vegetables for dinner. Matt walked past, trying not to look at her. "Matt, you're home," she said, looking up. "How's school?" "Fine," he muttered, heading towards the stairs. "Wait," Catherine dried her hands on a towel and walked out of the kitchen. "I wanted to ask if you could help Abby with her math. She has a test tomorrow, and I'm busy today." Matt stopped but didn't turn around. "Okay," he said without adding anything else, and went up to his room. An hour later, Abby knocked on his door, holding a textbook and a pencil. "Matt, Mom said you could help. she said, stumbling into the room. I don't understand these fractions, they're stupid. Matt sighed, but sat down at the table with her. Okay, show me what's in there. Abby opened her textbook, pointing at the problem with her pencil. Look, I have to add this and this, but they have different numbers at the bottom. How do you even do that? These are the denominators, Matt said, picking up a pencil. We need to find a common denominator. Look, we're multiplying here and here. He explained, trying to concentrate, but his mind was elsewhere. Abby chattered, oblivious to his detachment. Matt, did you know that Jenny's puppy learned to fetch a ball? I want a dog, too. Ask your dad, he said, without delving into it. Go on, what's next? When they were done, Abby ran off, and Matt sat there, staring at the blank page. He heard Catherine calling everyone to dinner, but he was in no hurry to go down. It wasn't until William called out, Matt, hurry up, the food's getting cold, that he reluctantly went down. At the table, William looked tired, his face paler than usual. He coughed into a napkin, but tried to smile. Matt, how was practice? He asked, helping himself to a fry. Fine, Matt replied, not looking at Catherine, who was sitting opposite him. The match is tomorrow. Great, William said. I'll come and see if I can. Gotta support the team. Catherine was silent as she handed Abby a plate of vegetables. Matt felt her eyes on him, but he didn't look up. Abby chattered about school, about how her friend Jenny had spilled her juice in class, but Matt was barely listening. After dinner, he volunteered to wash the dishes to avoid Catherine. She stayed in the dining room, clearing the table. When he finished, she came into the kitchen with an empty bowl. Matt, thanks for helping Abby, she said quietly. I know this is hard for you, but... Don't start, he interrupted, putting the plate in the dryer. I did what you asked. That's enough. Catherine froze, her lips pressing together. I just wish we could talk like we used to. Like before, Matt turned to her, his voice low so William wouldn't hear. You ruined everything, Mom. Don't pretend nothing's changed. She hung her head, her fingers tightening around the bowl. I know it's my fault, but I'm trying to make it right. Give me a chance, Matt. No, he said coldly and walked out of the kitchen, leaving her alone. Matt stood by the hospital bed, looking at his father. William lay under a thin white blanket, his face pale, almost gray, his breathing shallow and shallow. Roman 4 tubes ran into his arm, and a monitor next to him beeped softly, tracking his pulse. It had been 2 years since Matt had caught his mother, Catherine, with another man. In that time, William's lung cancer had progressed, and now, in June 2007, the doctors said the countdown was over. Matt, who had just turned 18, felt the world slipping from under him. He wasn't ready to lose his father. Hey, Dad, Matt said quietly, sitting down on the chair next to the bed. How are you today? William opened his eyes, his gaze clouded, but he tried to smile. I'm fine, son. Just a little tired. How are you? Did you pass your exams? Yeah, Matt nodded, although that wasn't entirely true. His high school finals had been a blur, and he'd barely focused when he thought about the hospital. It's okay. Graduation is coming soon. Well done, William coughed, covering his mouth with his hand. I'm proud of you. Always have been. Matt pressed his lips together to keep his emotions in check. He wanted to say more, but the words stuck in his throat. Instead, he just sat there, listening to the beeping monitor and the footsteps of the nurses in the hallway. The sun was shining outside the Omaha hospital window, but the room was cold and smelled of antiseptic. The door to the room creaked open and a nurse entered, a woman in her 40s with short dark hair and a tired smile. Her name tag read Jennifer. Matt, hi, she said, checking the Roman 4. How is he today? Same, Matt replied, not taking his eyes off his father. Sometimes he talks, sometimes he sleeps. That's okay, Jennifer adjusted the blanket on William. If you need anything, call me, I'm on duty. Want some coffee? We have a machine in the break room. No, thanks, Matt said, shaking his head. He didn't drink coffee, but he appreciated her attempt to distract him. Jennifer nodded and walked out, leaving them alone. Matt looked at his father, who had closed his eyes again. William was a shadow of the strong man who had taught him to throw a ball and fix a car. Matt remembered how, 2 years ago, he had promised Catherine not to tell his father about her betrayal. Back then, he had thought he was protecting him. Now, looking at William, he wondered if he had done the right thing. The truth could change everything or destroy it. Matt, William's voice was weak, almost a whisper. You, keep an eye on Abby, okay? She's still little. Sure, Dad, Matt said, leaning closer. Don't worry, I can handle her. William nodded, his eyes closing again. Matt sat there until he heard his father's breathing become more even. He stood up, adjusted his chair, and went out into the hallway to let him sleep. The hospital lobby was busy. Visitors, nurses, a guy in a blue uniform pushing a cart of linens. Matt noticed Abby, his 12-year-old sister, sitting in a chair by the soda machine. Her curly hair was braided, and she was holding a comic book, but she wasn't reading it, just flipping through the pages. Hey, Abby, Matt said, sitting down next to her. How are you? It's boring, she muttered, without looking up. It always stinks of medicine here. When will Daddy get better? Matt swallowed, unsure of what to say. Abby knew her father was sick, but no one had told her how serious it was. Soon, he lied. We'll just have to wait. Okay then, Abby shrugged. Matt, can I get a Coke? I don't have any money. Matt took $1 out of his pocket and put it in the machine. Just don't drink it too fast, or your tummy will hurt. Abby smiled, grabbing the jar. You always say that. Look, Jenny asked me to come over today. Can I come? Ask your mom, Matt said, though the word mom left a bitter taste in his mouth. He had barely spoken to Catherine since the day he had found her with Paul. She had tried to make contact, but he had been cold, answering only when necessary. Mom's always busy, Abby pouted. She's always in the library or here with Dad. Just ask me, okay? We'll see, Matt said, not wanting to promise. He stood up. I'm going to check on Dad. Don't run away. Abby nodded, opening a Coke. Matt came back into the room, but William was still asleep. He sat up, pulled out his phone, and started scrolling through his messages. Jack, his best friend, was writing, Yo, how are you? Are you in the hospital? I can stop by if anything. Matt answered briefly, Yes, here. We'll call each other later. A few days later, William died. It happened at night, when Matt was at home. Catherine called from the hospital, her voice shaking. Matt, come over. Dad's gone. He didn't remember getting to the hospital or hugging Abby as she cried in the hallway. It was all a blur. William was gone without knowing about Catherine's betrayal, and Matt didn't know whether to be glad about that or hate himself for keeping quiet. The funeral was quiet. The cemetery was filled with relatives, a few of William's friends, and workers from his auto repair shops. Matt stood by the casket, looking at the wreaths and the photograph of his father, smiling and holding a fishing rod. Abby held his hand, her face red from crying. Catherine stood a little to the side, wearing a black dress, her eyes hidden behind dark glasses. Matt, how are you? Asked Uncle Ron, William's brother, clapping him on the shoulder. Ron was a large man with a thick beard that smelled of tobacco. If anything happens, call me. I'm always here. Fine, Matt replied, although it wasn't true. Thanks, Uncle. Your father was a good man, Ron said, looking at the coffin. Gone too soon. Matt nodded, unsure of what to say. He noticed Mrs. Clark, the neighbor, standing with a handkerchief, and Trevor, who had come in a wrinkled shirt, clearly not of his own free will. Trevor caught his eye and nodded awkwardly, as if he didn't know how to act. After the ceremony, everyone left, but Matt lingered at the grave. He looked at the fresh earth, feeling empty. Catherine approached him, her voice quiet. Matt, let's go home, she said. Abby's tired. I'll be back later, he replied without looking at her. I want to be alone. Catherine paused, then nodded and left. Matt stayed until the sun began to set. He didn't cry. He'd run out of tears in the hospital. But everything hurt inside, and he knew it wouldn't go away. A month after the funeral, Matt decided it was time to move on. He enrolled in college in Omaha, majoring in finance, a path that seemed practical. The family home in the suburbs where he'd grown up was too big for him, Abby, and Catherine. Plus, every corner was a reminder of his father and his mother's betrayal. Matt convinced Catherine to sell it, despite her objections. Matt, are you sure? She asked, sitting at the kitchen table with papers. This is our home. This is where all our memories are. I don't want to live here, he said coldly, and Abby would be better off in an apartment closer to the school. Catherine sighed, but signed the papers. The house sold for a good price, and Matt insisted on selling his father's auto repair shop. He didn't want to run it. It was William's business, not his. The money from the sale was split. Some went to Abby's account, some to Matt's college, and Catherine put the rest into a new condo in downtown Omaha. The move went quickly. Matt took only the most necessary things: clothes, a laptop, a couple of books. His new room in the apartment was smaller, but he didn't care. The main thing was to get away from the past. Catherine tried to arrange the new place, bought curtains, hung photos, but Matt didn't participate. He saw her only as a woman who had destroyed his trust, and he wasn't going to pretend that everything was okay. Matt, do you want to pick a color for your room? Catherine asked one day, holding up paint samples. I was thinking maybe blue or gray. I don't care, he replied, without looking up from his phone. Do as you wish, I'm not here for long. Catherine looked at him, her face sad, but she didn't say anything. Matt knew she was trying, but he didn't care. He couldn't forgive her, and every time she looked at him, it was like that day he found her with Paul. In college, Matt quickly became immersed in his studies. The economics and finance classes were boring, but he forced himself to go to avoid thinking about home. His roommate, a guy named Kyle, was a skinny freshman with glasses and a habit of chewing gum. Hey, Matt, are you coming to the party on Friday? Kyle asked, lying on his bed with his laptop. There's gonna be a bunch of people there, and there's gonna be beer. I don't know, Matt replied, leafing through his textbook. I'm not much of a party person. Come on, relax for once, Kyle grinned. You're always on edge. What, did the girl dump you? No, Matt said, rolling his eyes. I'm just busy. Kyle shrugged and went back to his laptop. Matt was glad he didn't ask questions. He didn't want to talk about his family, about Catherine, about how her betrayal still affected him. He didn't trust people the way he used to, and he kept everyone at a distance. One evening, on his way back from a lecture, Matt stopped at a cafe near campus. It was noisy. Students were chatting at tables, and the waitress, a girl with a pierced nose, was serving coffee. Matt ordered a sandwich and sat by the window, looking out onto the street. Across from him sat a couple, a guy and a girl, holding hands. Matt looked away, feeling a twinge of envy. He couldn't remember the last time he'd felt so at ease. Hey, Matt, is that you? A voice called. Matt looked up and saw Jack, his school friend, holding a tray. Jack, hi, Matt said, smiling slightly. What brings you here? Yeah, hanging out with the guys. Jack nodded at the table in the corner where 3 guys were sitting. And what are you doing alone? Still studying like a nerd? Yeah, something like that, Matt replied. I just got in. I need to get into the swing of things. Well, don't bury yourself in your books, Jack said, sitting down opposite. Listen, we're going to the lake this weekend, campfire and beer. Come with us, huh? I'll think about it, Matt said, although he knew he would probably refuse. He wanted to have fun when everything inside was so heavy. Okay, right if you decide to. Jack clapped him on the shoulder and went back to his friends. Matt finished his sandwich and left, feeling like even his old friends couldn't pull him out of this void. At home in their new apartment, Catherine was cooking dinner and Abby was doing her homework at the kitchen table. Matt walked past, dropping his backpack by the door. Matt, dinner's in 10 minutes, Catherine said, stirring something on the stove. We'll have lasagna. I'm not hungry, he replied, heading to his room. You always say that, Abby said, looking up from her notebook. Matt, are you a vegan now? No, I just don't want to, he muttered, closing the door behind him. Matt pushed open the glass door of Bean Street Cafe in downtown Omaha and stepped inside. It was a Saturday morning, and the smell of freshly brewed coffee and croissants hung in the air. He'd just finished his first semester of college studying finance and was looking forward to spending the day away from his dorm and endless textbooks. He was 20, and though the pain of his father's death and his mother's betrayal still weighed on him, he was trying to move on. The cafe was bustling with students chatting at tables, someone tapping away at a laptop keyboard, and the barista calling out orders. Matt ordered a black coffee and a ham sandwich, finding a seat by the window. He took out his phone to check his messages. Jack, his school friend, wrote, "Yo, we're hanging out at Rick's tonight. There'll be beer, girls. Come on over." Matt shook his head and put his phone down. Parties weren't his thing, too much noise, too little meaning. He preferred solitude, though sometimes it got a bit oppressive. Is this seat taken? A female voice asked. Matt looked up. Standing before him was a girl in her 20s, with long dark hair pulled back into a loose braid and bright green eyes. She was wearing a denim jacket covered in badges and black jeans. She was holding a tray of coffee and a muffin. No, sit down, Matt said, pointing to the chair opposite. I'm alone. Cool, thanks, she smiled and plopped down on a chair, setting the tray on the table. It's always crowded here on weekends, you can't push through. Yeah, Matt nodded, sipping his coffee. First time here, usually I hang out on campus. Oh, you're a student? She asked, breaking off a piece of cake. Where do you study? Omaha College, he replied. Finance. What about you? I graduated a couple of years ago, studied art, she said, chewing. Now I have my own studio, not far from here. Well, studio is a strong word. More like a room with a bunch of canvases and paint. Matt smiled slightly. Her energy was infectious, and he found himself wondering. Studio? You paint? Yeah, I draw and I organize exhibitions, she nodded. My name is Sarah, by the way. Matt, he said, extending his hand across the table. She shook it, her palm warm and a little sticky from the sugar on the cake. Nice to meet you, Matt, Sarah smiled. So, tell me, what's finance? Do you want to be like a banker in a suit? Matt chuckled. Not really. I just want a job that pays well. What, are you selling paintings? Well, I'm trying, Sarah said, rolling her eyes. So far I spend more on paint than I earn. But I have a couple of artists, and their work is doing well. Do you know anything about art? No, Matt admitted. I'm more of a basketball guy. But it looks cool that you're running your own business. Thanks, Sarah sipped her coffee. It's hard, but I like it, and basketball is cool. Do you play for college? No, just for myself, Matt said. I was on a team at school, but now I run more in the mornings. Their conversation was interrupted by the waitress, a young woman with a pierced eyebrow who placed a sandwich in front of Matt. Here's your order, she said. Anything else? No, thanks, Matt replied, and Sarah added, I'd like some water, please. The waitress nodded and left. Sarah looked at Matt's sandwich. Looks good. I usually get the muffins here, but maybe I should try something a little more substantial. Take half, Matt offered, pushing the plate closer. I won't eat it all. Seriously, Sarah raised an eyebrow, but quickly broke off a piece of her sandwich. Okay, you're officially cool. Sharing food with a stranger. Matt laughed, feeling at ease for the first time in a long time. Sarah chatted on, about her studio, about the time one artist had spilled paint on the floor, about her dream of having a big exhibition. Matt listened, occasionally chiming in, but mostly just enjoying her energy. For the first time in 2 years, since his father had died and he had stopped talking to Catherine, he felt something like hope. "Listen," Sarah said, finishing her muffin. "I'm having an opening at my studio tomorrow, nothing big, just a few paintings. Want to come by? I'm not forcing you, but it'll be fun." Matt hesitated. He wasn't an art fan, but her invitation sounded sincere. I don't know about it," he said. "Won't I get bored?" "You won't be bored," Sarah assured, smiling. "There'll be wine and cheese, and I'll explain everything to you. Plus, I'll be there, and I'm actually funny." "Okay, you've convinced me," Matt said, smiling. "Where's your studio?" "On Dodge Street, next to the bookstore," she answered, taking out her phone. "Give me the number, I'll send you the address." Matt gave the number, and a second later his phone beeped. Sarah texted him the address and a paintbrush emoji. "Just so you don't forget," she said with a wink. They sat for another half hour until the cafe became even more crowded. Sarah finished her coffee and stood up. "Okay, I have to go to the studio to get ready for tomorrow. See you there." "Yeah," Matt nodded. "Thanks for the company." "Thanks for the sandwich," Sarah said, waving goodbye. She walked away, leaving Matt with a small smile. He finished his coffee, feeling that this day had turned out better than he had expected. That evening, Matt returned to his dorm. His roommate, Kyle, was sitting on his bed, playing a video game on his laptop. Empty energy drink cans were scattered on the floor. "Yo, Matt, where have you been?" Kyle asked, not looking up from the screen. "I thought you were holed up in the library again." "I was at a cafe," Matt answered, throwing his backpack on the bed. "I met a girl." "Wow, seriously?" Kyle put his laptop down. "Tell me, is she hot?" "That's not it," Matt said, rolling his eyes. "She's normal, owns a studio, paints pictures, invited me to an exhibition tomorrow." "An exhibition," Kyle grimaced. "Where are the boring paintings and warm wine? Are you sure you're okay?" "It's okay," Matt threw a pillow at him. "Maybe I'll like it." The next day, Matt put on a clean shirt and jeans and headed out to Dodge Street. Sarah's studio was a small space with brick walls covered in paintings. There were about 20 people inside, some looking at the canvases, others chatting over plastic cups of wine. Sarah was standing in the corner, talking to a tall guy with glasses who was holding a notepad. "Matt," she noticed him and waved. "Come here." Matt walked over, feeling a little out of place. "Hey," he said. "Cool place." "Thank you," Sarah smiled. "This is Tom. He writes about local artists for the newspaper." "Tom, this is Matt, my new friend." "Pleased to meet you," Tom said, shaking Matt's hand. "Are you an artist too?" "No, I'm just along for the ride," Matt replied. "I'm studying finance." "Oh man, you need to be friends with numbers," Tom laughed. "I'm zero at this." "Okay, Sarah, I'll talk to that guy who draws abstracts. See you later." Tom left, and Sarah turned to Matt. "So what do you think? Not as scary as it looks." "It's fine," Matt said, looking at the paintings. "I just don't know what to look at. Are they just paints, or do they mean something?" "That's a good question." Sarah took his arm and led him to a nearby canvas, which was splashed with bright yellow and blue. "This is a work by a friend of mine. He says it's about his childhood, but I just see a bunch of flowers. What do you see?" "Honestly," Matt shrugged, "it looks like a paint spill." Sarah laughed. "Honest answer. Okay, come on, I'll show you something even cooler." They walked around the studio, and Sarah explained who had painted what and why. Matt didn't understand everything, but her enthusiasm was infectious. He noticed how animated she became when talking about her paintings and how her eyes sparkled when someone complimented her work. For the first time in a long time, Matt felt like he wasn't alone. "Listen," he said as they stopped at the refreshment table. "This is really cool. You're so alive, I guess." "Oh, is that a compliment?" Sarah winked, taking a piece of cheese. "Thank you. And you, Matt, are you always this serious, or do you relax sometimes?" It happens, he said, smiling. It's just that life hasn't been very fun lately. I understand, Sarah nodded, her tone softening. Want to tell me? I'm a good listener. Matt hesitated. He wasn't ready to talk about Catherine, about his father, about how his world had fallen apart 2 years ago. Maybe later, he said. For now, I just want to hang out here with you. It's a deal, said Sarah, but I'll hold you to your word. Now have some wine. It's cheap, but not terrible. Matt took the drink, and they continued to chat. Sarah told him about opening her studio, how she nearly went broke buying paint, and the time a client dropped a painting on the floor. Matt shared stories from college about how Kyle once fell asleep in class and snored so loudly that the professor stopped the class. They laughed, and Matt felt the tension he had been carrying around slowly melt away. Towards the end of the evening, Sarah suggested they meet again. I have next Saturday off, she said as they stood outside the studio. Want to go to the park? There's a walking trail there, and I sometimes go there to paint. Sounds good, Matt said, but I don't draw. It's okay, I'll teach you, Sarah smiled. Or we'll just walk and chat. How are you? I'm in, he replied, feeling warmth in his chest. Right what time? They exchanged messages, and Matt went home, feeling something like joy for the first time in a long time. Sarah was different, open, fun, real. He didn't know where this would lead, but for the first time in 2 years, he wanted to find out. The following week, they met in the park. Sarah brought an easel and paints, and Matt brought a bottle of water and a couple of sandwiches. They sat on the grass, and Sarah tried to teach him how to draw a tree, but his sketch looked like a crooked stick. Well, it's avant-garde, Sarah said, holding back a laugh. You're not exactly Picasso, but you're trying. Oh, come on, I'm hopeless, Matt said, laughing. You draw, and I'll watch. They spent the day chatting about everything from their favorite movies to the time Sarah got stuck in an elevator to Matt nearly failing his economics exam. He didn't talk about his family, but he was at ease with Sarah. Matt stood in front of the mirror in his rented apartment in downtown Omaha, adjusting the knot of his tie. It was the morning of his wedding, and he could feel his heart pounding with a mixture of nerves and joy. It had been a year since he had met Sarah at the coffee shop, and their relationship had progressed quickly. He was 21, finishing college with a degree in finance, and Sarah, a year older, was successfully running her own small art studio. Today, in July 2008, they were getting married in a small ceremony at a local park. Matt glanced at his reflection. His dark hair was neatly combed. His black suit fit well, even though it was a rental. He took a deep breath, trying to calm himself. Hey, Matt, have you changed your mind? Jack, his best friend, called from the living room. Jack was sprawled on the couch, wearing a wrinkled shirt and holding a can of soda. Shut up, Matt yelled, but he smiled. Better help me with this tie, it's driving me crazy. Jack walked into the bedroom, smirking. Dude, you look like you're interviewing for a bank, not a wedding. Give it to me. He walked over and started tugging at the knot. Sarah's probably already all dressed up, and here you are with a crooked tie. She's fine, Matt said, looking in the mirror. Her friends are helping her. And did you remember the rings? You're insulting me, Jack patted his jacket pocket. Everything's under control. Just don't ask me how I almost forgot them at the bar yesterday. Matt rolled his eyes. Seriously, Jack, you're my witness. Just kidding, just kidding. Jack raised his hands. Relax, everything will be cool. Sarah is awesome. You did a great job not letting her go. Matt nodded, feeling the tension ease a little. Sarah was everything to him. Her laughter, her energy, her ability to pull him out of the dark thoughts of the past. After the death of his father and the betrayal of his mother, Catherine, Matt had long believed that he could not be happy. But with Sarah, he felt alive. An hour later, they arrived at the park, where guests were already gathering. It was a small area by the lake, decorated with white ribbons and flowers. The weather was warm, the sun was shining, and a light breeze rustled the leaves. There were about 20 guests, friends, Sarah's colleagues, a few relatives. Matt's younger sister, Abby, now 14, was chatting with Sarah's friend Lena, holding a basket of rose petals. "Matt, you're so cool," Abby exclaimed, running up to him. "This is like a movie. I'm going to throw flowers, right?" "Yeah, just don't throw them all around now," Matt said, patting her head. "Where's Mom?" Abby shrugged. "She's over there with Aunt Lori. Said you should check the rings." Matt nodded, feeling a lump in his throat. He hadn't wanted to invite Catherine, but Abby had insisted, and Sarah had backed him up, saying that this was her family. Matt rarely saw his mother, speaking only when necessary. She knew he hadn't forgiven her for betraying their father, and their conversations were cold and short. The ceremony began at noon. Matt stood under an arch of flowers, next to Jack and the priest, an older man with a kind smile. Guests sat on folding chairs, and in the distance, children played by a lake. As the music began, a simple guitar melody played by a friend of Sarah's, Matt saw her. Sarah was walking across the grass, holding a small bouquet of daisies. Her white dress was simple, but showed off her slender figure, and her dark hair was loose, curling slightly in the wind. She smiled, and Matt felt his heart skip a beat. "You look fine," Jack whispered, nudging him with his elbow. "Remember to breathe." "Shut up," Matt muttered, but he couldn't take his eyes off Sarah. She stopped next to him, and the priest began to talk about love and family. Matt barely listened, looking at her. When it was time for the vows, he pulled the paper out of his pocket, but decided to speak for himself. "Sarah," he began, his voice a little hoarse. "I'm not a wordsmith, but you've made my life better. You make me laugh even when I'm down. I promise to be with you, to take care of you, and to never let you get bored. I love you." The guest smiled, and Sarah laughed, wiping away a tear. "Matt, you are a romantic after all," she said, taking his hand. "I'm not a great talker either, but you're my best friend. You make me feel like I can do anything. I promise to be honest, support you, and share all your adventures with you. I love you." They exchanged rings, and the officiant pronounced them husband and wife. Matt leaned over and kissed Sarah, feeling her warm lips and hearing the guests applaud. Abby screamed, "Yay!" and threw petals into the air, causing laughter. After the ceremony, the reception began tables with snacks, music from a portable speaker, dancing on the grass. Matt and Sarah walked among the guests, accepting congratulations. Sarah's friend Lena hugged them both. "You are so cute, I'm just crying," said Lena, adjusting her glasses. "Sarah, the dress is amazing. Where did you get it?" "At the thrift store," Sarah replied, grinning. "For $20. Pretty cool, huh?" "Brilliant," Lena laughed. "Matt, take care of her. She's a treasure." "I know," Matt said, putting his arm around Sarah's waist. Matt's Uncle Ron came up to them, holding a beer. "Congratulations, nephew," he said, clapping Matt on the shoulder. "Sarah, your family now. If he keeps acting up, call me and I'll sort it out." "Okay," Sarah smiled. "Thank you, Ron." Matt noticed Catherine standing off to the side, holding a glass of water. She looked tired, her face paler than usual. He didn't want to approach her, but Sarah squeezed his hand. "Let's go say hello," she said quietly. "She's your mother." Matt nodded reluctantly, and they walked over. Catherine looked up, her smile tight. "Matt, Sarah, congratulations," she said. "It's been a wonderful day." "Thank you," Sarah replied, smiling. "I'm glad you came." Matt was silent, looking away. Catherine looked at him, but he didn't meet her gaze. "Matt, you look happy," she said quietly. "I'm happy for you." "Yeah," he muttered. "Thanks." Sarah pulled him by the arm, and they walked away. "Are you okay?" she asked when they were alone. "Yeah, she's fine," Matt said, forcing a smile. "I just don't like talking to her." "I understand," Sarah nodded. "But today is our day, so let's have fun, okay?" "Okay," he agreed, kissing her forehead. The evening passed quickly, dancing, toasts, laughter. Jack got drunk and tried to sing karaoke, causing laughter. Abby persuaded Matt to dance with her, and he awkwardly shuffled around while she giggled. Sarah beamed, chatting with the guests and singing along to the music. Matt looked at her and thought he had made the right choice. As the guests began to leave, Matt and Sarah stayed on the site, gathering up the remains of the meal. The sky was dark and starry. They sat on a bench by the lake, Sarah resting her head on his shoulder. "So, husband, how do you feel?" she asked, smiling. "Not bad, wife," Matt replied, hugging her. "Don't you regret marrying an unemployed student?" "Not a bit," Sarah said. "We'll get through this. The main thing is that we're together." Matt nodded, but his mind was elsewhere. He knew he had to be honest with her, especially after what he had been through with Catherine. "Sarah, can we talk seriously?" he asked, pulling away. "Of course," she sat up straight, looking at him. "What happened?" Matt took a deep breath. "I never told you everything about my family. My mom, mostly." Sarah nodded, her face serious. "I know things are complicated for you. Are you ready to talk?" "Yes," he said, looking at the lake. "When I caught her with another man, Dad was sick with cancer, and she was cheating on him in our house. She asked me not to tell him because Dad might not be able to handle it. I agreed, but I never forgave her. Dad died 2 years later, never knowing." Sarah was silent, listening. Then she took his hand. "Matt, that's terrible. I'm so sorry you had to go through that." I don't want things to be like this," he said, looking into her eyes. "For me, cheating is the end. I can't live with it. If anything ever changes, just tell me right now, okay? I'll let you go, but I don't want to lie." Sarah squeezed his hand. "Matt, I understand, and I agree with you. If something goes wrong, I'll tell you first. I want this to be fair. I promise." "I promise too," he said, feeling the tension fading. "I love you, Sarah." "And I you," she smiled, leaning in for a kiss. "We can handle this, right?" "Yes," Matt nodded, hugging her. They sat like that for a long time, listening to the sound of the water and the distant laughter of the last guests. For the first time in a long time, Matt felt like he had a future in which he could be happy. The next day, they left for a short honeymoon, just 3 days at a lake house an hour outside of Omaha. It wasn't fancy, a log cabin, an old pier, a grill in the backyard. But they didn't care. They walked, fried marshmallows, and swam in the lake. Sarah painted landscapes, and Matt looked at her, thinking how lucky he was. "Look," Sarah said, holding up a sketch of a lake with a pier. "This is for our apartment. We'll hang it above the sofa." "Cool," Matt said, hugging her from behind. "Just don't draw me, I'm bad." "Of course I will," she laughed. "You are my main object." They returned to Omaha, starting a new life. Matt moved in with Sarah in her small apartment above her studio. He attended lectures during the day and spent his evenings with her, helping with exhibitions or just chatting over pizza. Sometimes he found himself afraid to trust completely, but Sarah was honest, open, and he learned to let go of the past. One day, while helping Sarah in the studio, Matt met her friend, Nick, an artist with a beard and tattoos on his arms. Nick was painting a canvas while they unpacked boxes of frames. "Matt, are you the husband?" Nick asked, grinning. "Sarah talks about you." "Yeah, that's me," Matt replied, putting the box down. "And what are you, her main competitor?" "Nah, I'm in a different style," Nick said. "She's more into portraits, and I'm more into graffiti. But she's cool, stick with her." "I plan to," Matt said, smiling. He looked at Sarah, who was arguing with the delivery man at the door, and thought that, despite everything, life was finally starting to get better. Matt sat on the couch in their small downtown Omaha apartment, flipping through the sports channel on the television. It was a Saturday morning in June 2012, and he was 25 years old. He and Sarah had been married 4 years, and their life, once full of adventures together, was beginning to feel routine. Sarah, now a successful art studio owner, was spending more and more time at work, preparing for major exhibitions. Matt, a college graduate who worked as an analyst at a local financial services firm, felt like he and his wife were drifting apart. He glanced at the empty coffee table where their shared mug usually sat and noticed that Sarah had been drinking coffee in the studio for a week now. The door to the apartment opened and Sarah walked in, carrying a bag of papers and a laptop. Her dark hair was pulled back into a messy bun, and there were shadows under her eyes. She looked tired, but her eyes sparkled with the enthusiasm they always did when she talked about her work. "Hi," she said, throwing her bag on a chair. "Are you awake yet? I thought you were going to sleep until lunch." "I can't sleep," Matt replied, turning off the TV. "Were you in the studio all night again?" "Not all of it," Sarah shrugged, heading for the kitchen. "I came back at 2. You were already asleep. Want some coffee? I'll make it." "No, I already drank," he said, watching her take out a can of coffee. "Sarah, have you been home at all lately?" She turned around, her eyebrows raised. "What kind of question is that? Of course I do. It's just that I'm really busy right now. The exhibition is next week. You know how important that is." Matt nodded, but his face remained serious. "I know, but you're there every night. We hardly see each other." Sarah sighed, turning on the coffee maker. "Matt, this is temporary. It will get easier after the show. If you want, come to the studio today and help with the frames." "Maybe," he muttered, though he knew he wouldn't go. The last time he'd been in the studio, Sarah had been too busy chatting with the artists to make him feel out of place. The smell of coffee filled the kitchen and Sarah sat at the table, scrolling through her phone. Matt looked at her, noticing her smiling as she read the messages. "Who is this?" he asked, trying to sound casual. "Ethan," Sarah said, not looking up. "He sent some photos for the catalog. They're cool. We need to pick the best ones." Ethan. Matt tensed at the name. Ethan Cross was a photographer whose work Sarah had started showing in her studio 6 months ago. Young, mid-20s, with long hair and a tattoo on his neck, he was talented and charismatic. Matt had met him a few times and noticed how Sarah brightened up when she talked about his pictures. He didn't want to be paranoid, but memories of his mother, Catherine, betraying him kept popping into his head every time Sarah mentioned Ethan. "You hang out with him a lot," Matt said, his voice even but slightly accusatory. Sarah looked up, frowning. "Yeah, he's exhibiting here. We work together. What's wrong?" "Nothing," Matt shrugged, looking away. "Just asking." Sarah rolled her eyes and went back to the phone. "You're acting weird today. If you have something to say, just say it." Matt opened his mouth, then changed his mind. He didn't want to start a fight, especially when she was so busy. "Forget it," he said, standing up. "I'm going to the gym." "Okay," Sarah replied, not looking up from the screen. "See you tonight." "If you're home," he said, grabbing his sneakers and leaving the apartment. It was hot outside, and Matt felt his irritation growing as he walked down Dodge Street. He knew Sarah loved her job, but her constant absences and talk of Ethan were starting to bother him. He remembered how Catherine had acted before he caught her with Paul. She, too, had been busy, distant, always making excuses. Matt hated himself for thinking about it, but he couldn't stop thinking about it. At the gym, he met Jack, who was pumping weights in the corner. Jack, now a mechanic in one of William's former workshops, looked the same as he had in his school days, only with more muscle. "Yo, Matt," Jack called, lowering the barbell. "Why so gloomy? Is Sarah making you hang pictures again?" "No," Matt shook his head, stepping onto the treadmill. "She's in the studio, like always, getting ready for the show." "Well, that's cool," Jack said, wiping his sweat with a towel. "Her studio is well known. I saw it in the paper. You should be proud." "Yeah, I am." Matt turned on the treadmill and started running. "It's just, she's there all the time, and she hangs out with Ethan all the time." Jack raised his eyebrows. "Ethan? That photographer with the long hair? Dude, he looks like a 90s rock star." "Exactly," Matt muttered, picking up the pace. She's chatting with him, laughing, and I'm sitting at home like an idiot. Hey, take it easy. Jack stepped closer. You don't think she's, like your mom? Matt slowed, his face tightening. I don't know. I don't want to think about it, but damn, Jack, I can't get it out of my head. Look, Jack sat down on the bench next to her. Sarah is not like that. I know her, she loves you. Maybe you're just overwhelmed at work. Talk to her. I tried, Matt said, turning off the treadmill. She says she's fine, but I can tell she's different. Talk to me less. You know? Jack nodded, rubbing his chin. Yeah, that sucks. But you're not stalking her like a detective, are you? That's paranoid. Matt said nothing, wiping sweat from his face. He didn't want to admit that he'd driven past the studio a couple of times to check on Sarah. I'm not following, he lied. I'm just worried. Talk to her again, Jack said. And come to Rick's today, relax. Kelly will be there, still talking about her cat. Matt chuckled. Pass, but thanks. He finished his workout and went home, but Sarah had already left for the studio. There was a note on the table. I'll be back late, don't wait up. There's food in the fridge. Love S. Matt crumpled the note and threw it in the trash. He felt the distance between them growing, and it scared him. That evening, he decided to go to the cafe across from Sarah's studio to have a coffee and, frankly, see what was going on. The cafe was full. Students, couples, a guy in the corner with a laptop. Matt sat by the window, looking out into the studio. The light was on inside, and he spotted Sarah laughing and talking to Ethan. He was showing her something on his camera, and she nodded, smiling. Matt gripped his cup so tightly that his knuckles turned white. Hey, is everything okay? Asked the waitress, a girl with short pink hair and the name Mel on her name tag. You look like someone scratched your car. Yeah, fine, Matt said, forcing a smile. Just thinking. It happens, Mel shrugged, clearing the empty plate from the table. If you need more coffee, whistle. Matt nodded, but his gaze returned to the studio. Sarah and Ethan came outside, carrying a box of frames. They stopped by her car, still chatting. Ethan said something, and Sarah laughed, touching his shoulder. Matt felt the blood rush to his face. He knew it could just be a friendly gesture, but memories of Catherine and the way she had treated Paul came flooding back to him. He finished his coffee and left, not wanting to watch any more. At home, he lay down on the couch, turned on the TV, but couldn't concentrate. Sarah returned after midnight, quietly opening the door. Matt pretended to be asleep, not wanting to talk. She went into the bedroom, and soon he heard the sound of the shower. The next day, Matt decided to try to talk. They were sitting at breakfast, Sarah eating toast and scrolling through her tablet. Matt cleared his throat. Sarah, can we talk? He asked, pushing his plate away. Of course, she looked up. Did something happen? You've been different lately, he said, choosing his words carefully. You're always in the studio, we hardly talk. And this Ethan, you spend a lot of time with him. Sarah frowned, putting down her tablet. Matt, this is work. Ethan is a photographer. His show is a big part of our program. I can't just tell him, bye, do it yourself. I know it's a job, Matt said, his voice sharpening. But you laugh with him, you chat, but with me, when was the last time we just talked? We're talking now, Sarah replied, her tone irritated. Matt, I'm tired. The show's in a week, and I'm drowning in work. You want me to drop everything? No, he shook his head. But I want you to be with me. I feel like I'm losing you. Sarah sighed, rubbing her temples. You're not losing me. I'm just busy. Everything will be fine after the exhibition, I promise. Okay, Matt said, but he didn't believe her. He'd seen the way she looked at her phone, the way she smiled when Ethan's texts came through. Just be careful with him, okay? With Ethan, Sarah raised her eyebrows. Matt, he's a colleague. There's nothing like that. Are you serious? Seriously, he said, looking into her eyes. I just want us to be honest with each other. I'm being honest, she snapped, standing up. I have to get to the studio. I'll see you tonight. She left, leaving Matt at the table. He stared at her half-finished coffee, feeling doubts rising. He hated himself for it, but he couldn't stop thinking about Catherine, how her lies had destroyed the family. He didn't want that to happen to Sarah, but her distance and her closeness to Ethan made him suspect the worst. That night, Matt went to the bar where Jack and his friends were hanging out. The bar was loud and smelled of beer and fried chicken wings. The bartender, Lisa, was working the counter and always winked at Jack when he ordered a beer. "Matt, you're here," Jack exclaimed, raising his mug. "I thought you were sitting at home again." "I decided to get some fresh air," Matt said, sitting down at the table. "What do you have here?" "No big deal, just drinking and chatting," said a guy named Steve, Jack's friend. "Listen, is your wife the one with the gallery? I saw her work in a magazine. Cool." "Yeah, she's great," Matt replied, ordering a beer. "It's just that we're busy right now. We don't see each other very often." "It's normal," Steve said with a shrug. "My girlfriend's always at work too. You'll get used to it." Matt nodded, but Steve's words didn't calm him down. He drank his beer, listening to Jack and Steve argue about football, but his thoughts were on Sarah and Ethan. He knew he should trust her, but something inside him was bothering him. He decided he'd talk to her again when she got back, but for now he just tried to distract himself by looking at the noisy crowd in the bar. Matt sat at a table by the window in the Bean Street Cafe, sipping a cold black coffee. Across the street, the glowing window of Sarah's art studio, where she spent most of her time, lit up. It was 7 in the evening in July 2012, and Matt, who had just turned 25, felt his life slowly slipping out of control. He had married Sarah, the energetic owner of the studio, 4 years earlier, but their marriage was now falling apart. She was staying late more and more often, preparing for exhibitions, and Matt couldn't shake the suspicion that she was paying attention to Ethan Cross, the young photographer whose work she was showing. He hated sitting there, watching her, but the memory of his mother, Catherine, betraying him, made him check. The cafe was bustling, students cramming on laptops, a couple giggling over their phones in the corner, and the barista, a dreadlocked guy named Kevin, wiping down the counter. Matt had chosen this spot because it had a good view of the studio, but he tried to look casual as he flipped through a sports magazine he'd picked up from the counter. "More coffee?" Kevin asked, walking past with a pot of coffee. "No, thanks," Matt replied, shaking his head. "I'm done with this for now." "Okay, dude," Kevin shrugged and went to serve the girl ordering a caramel latte. Matt looked back at the studio. Sarah was there, silhouetted through the glass. She was standing at an easel, talking to someone. A minute later, Ethan came up to her, holding a camera. His long hair was pulled back into a ponytail, and there was a tattoo on his neck. They chatted, and Sarah laughed, bumping him with her shoulder. Matt gripped his cup so tightly that his knuckles turned white. The gesture, light and friendly, reminded him of the way Catherine had touched Paul, the man he had caught her with 5 years ago. He knew Sarah wasn't like that, but he was still gnawed at by doubt. His phone vibrated on the table. A message from Jack, his best friend. "Yo, where are you?" "We're at Rick's." Come on," Matt wrote. "Busy, we'll call later." He didn't want to hang out, not now. He needed to figure out what was going on with Sarah. The door to the cafe clinked and Trevor, a neighbor from Matt's old neighborhood with his parents, walked in. Trevor, now 20, with red hair and a tattered t-shirt with a local band logo, was holding a skateboard under his arm. "Matt, what's up?" Trevor plopped down on the chair opposite without asking permission. "Are you a coffee drinker now? I thought you only liked beer." "Just sitting here," Matt replied, looking away from the studio. "What are you doing here?" "Just passing by," Trevor said, waving at Kevin. "Hey man, make me an espresso, will you?" He turned to Matt. "Jenny's got a party tonight, I'm heading there. You and Sarah are coming." "No, she's busy," Matt muttered, looking at the magazine to hide his tension. "The exhibition is soon." "Oh yeah, she's always in her studio," Trevor nodded. It's cool that her business is going well. You'll probably be a millionaire soon, right? Matt chuckled. Yeah, dream on. He didn't want to talk about Sarah, but Trevor wouldn't let up. Listen, I saw her with that photographer. What's his name? Ethan, Trevor said, chewing gum. He's cool. His photos are awesome. They're really having a blast in the studio, aren't they? Matt tensed, his fingers tightening around the magazine. They're working, he said, trying to sound calm. It's her business. Well, yeah, I see, Trevor shrugged, not noticing his tone. Okay, I'm off. If you change your mind, come to Jenny. He walked away, leaving Matt with an even bigger lump in her chest. Trevor's words about Ethan and Sarah getting it on together echoed in her head. Matt looked back at the studio. Sarah and Ethan were now standing at the entrance, holding a box of frames. They were talking animatedly, and Sarah was smiling, nodding. Matt felt anger mingle with pain. He knew he should trust her, but every time she laughed with Ethan, it felt like a betrayal. Hey, are you reading the magazine or just holding it? A voice said. Matt turned around. At the next table sat a girl of about 18 with short pink hair and a laptop. Her t-shirt had the logo of a local college. Oh no, take it, Matt said, pushing the magazine towards him. I'm done. Thank you, she smiled. I'm Liz, writing my term paper. Are you local? Yeah, Matt said, not really in the mood for chatting. I live close by. Cool, Liz opened the magazine but kept talking. I'm from Lincoln, I just moved here. This cafe is a lifesaver, it's always noisy at home. Do you come here often? Sometimes, Matt said, looking at the studio. Sarah and Ethan were still at the entrance, Ethan now showing her something on his phone. Liz followed his gaze. Oh, that's the gallery. I was there last week. They had some great pictures. Do you want to go there? My wife works there, Matt said without going into details. Oh, cool, Liz nodded. She's an artist? Owns a studio, he replied, feeling his irritation growing. He didn't want to talk about Sarah to a stranger, but Liz wouldn't let up. That sounds cool, she said, leafing through the magazine. I'd like to do something like that, but I'm just writing essays right now. Well, I won't distract you. Matt nodded, returning to watching. Sarah and Ethan finally walked back into the studio, and the light in the window grew brighter. Matt finished his coffee, left a few dollars on the table, and walked out. He didn't know what to make of what he'd seen, but his jealousy was growing with each passing day. At home, he found a note from Sarah. I'll be back late, don't wait up. There's food in the fridge. Love, S. He crumpled it up and threw it in the trash, as he had done many times before. He sat down on the couch and turned on the TV, but he didn't watch it, thinking about Sarah and Ethan. The memory of Catherine, of how she had lied to their father, came back to him again and again. He swore to himself that he wouldn't let Sarah do the same to him. The next day, Matt went into the cafe again, not admitting to himself that this was surveillance. He ordered a coffee and sat by the window, watching the studio. Sarah was there, putting up a new sign for the exhibition. Ethan showed up half an hour later, carrying a backpack with a camera. They walked outside, carrying a box of posters, and stopped at Sarah's car. She laughed, fixing her hair, and he said something, gesturing. Matt watched them load the box and felt his heart squeeze. Here you go again, Kevin, the barista said, setting a fresh coffee in front of Matt without him asking. Dude, you're such a regular. Yeah, it's just a convenient location, Matt replied, not taking his eyes off Sarah. Well, if anything, we have free Wi-Fi, Kevin grinned and left. Matt nodded, not listening. His phone vibrated a call from Abby, his sister, now 17. He answered, glad for the distraction. Matt, hi, Abby said, her voice cheerful. Where are you? I'm in town, just went to the movies with a friend. I'm sitting in a cafe, he replied. How was the movie? It's great, but the popcorn is expensive, she complained. Listen, can I stop by? I'm not far. Yeah, come on over, Matt said. I'm at Bean Street on the Dodge. 10 minutes later, Abby burst into the cafe, her curly hair pulled back into a high ponytail and a shopping bag in her hands. "Matt," she exclaimed, sitting down across from him. "Why are you so gloomy? Are you swamped with work again?" "No, I'm just thinking," he said, smiling. "What did you buy?" A t-shirt and a bracelet. Abby showed the bag. "Look, there are cats on them. I'm going to college. I need to look cool." "You're already cool," Matt said, but his gaze returned to the studio. Abby noticed. "Is this Sarah's studio?" she asked. "Is she there? I'd like to come in. I haven't seen her in a while." "She's busy," Matt replied, his voice sharper than he intended. "The show's coming up." "Okay," Abby shrugged, ordering a juice from Kevin. "Look, are you okay with her? You're weird when I ask about her." Matt tensed. "It's okay, Abby. We both just have a lot of work." "Okay, don't be mad," she said, sipping her juice. "Sarah's just so cool. I'm worried about you. She's like a sister to me." Matt nodded, feeling a twinge of guilt. He knew Sarah loved Abby and Abby adored her, but his suspicions nagged at him. "I know," he said. "Don't worry about it." Abby was babbling about college, about how she wanted to study biology, but Matt was only half listening. He watched as Sarah and Ethan came out of the studio again, carrying another box. They stopped at the car, and Ethan said something that made Sarah laugh, touching his arm. Matt squeezed the phone so hard the screen flickered. "Matt, can you hear me?" Abby nudged him. "I'm telling you about college, and you're staring out the window." "Sorry," he said, looking away. "I was lost in thought. What were you saying?" "Oh, come on," Abby rolled her eyes. "Okay, I gotta run. I still have a meeting with a friend. See you then." "Yeah," Matt nodded. "Right, if anything." Abby left, and Matt remained, looking out at the studio. Sarah and Ethan came back inside, and he felt his anger rising. He knew he should talk to her, but he was afraid to hear the truth. Instead, he continued to watch, telling himself he was looking for proof. The next day, he was back at the cafe. Kevin noticed him and grinned. "Dude, you're our best customer. Maybe we should reserve a table for you." "Nah, I won't be long," Matt said, ordering a coffee. He sat by the window, watching Sarah and Ethan hang posters in the window. They worked together, joking, and Matt felt left out. Liz, the pink-haired student, sat down next to him. "Here you go again," she said, opening her laptop. "I'm starting to think you live here." "Just drinking coffee," Matt replied, not in the mood for chatting. "Well, the coffee here is okay," Liz nodded. "Listen, I saw a poster for that gallery across the street. There are photos of some Ethan Cross. Did you look at them?" "No," Matt said, his voice cold. "I didn't have time." "In vain, they're cool." Liz started typing. "I'll go there for the opening. Will you come with your wife?" "I don't know," he muttered, watching Sarah and Ethan laugh about something. He couldn't take it anymore. He stood up, left the money on the table, and walked out, deciding he'd had enough of watching. But his suspicions were only getting stronger, and he knew he'd have to do something soon. Matt pushed open the glass door of Sarah's art studio, and the bell above the door jingled. It was just before 8 in the evening in July 2012, and the studio on Dodge Street in Omaha was getting ready to close. The interior smelled of paint and wood, and the walls were lined with paintings and photographs ready for an upcoming exhibition. Matt, who had recently turned 25, felt his heart pound with a mixture of anger and anxiety. He had been watching Sarah from the cafe across the street for the past few weeks, often chatting and laughing with Ethan Cross, a young photographer whose work she was showing. His suspicions, fueled by memories of his mother's betrayal 5 years earlier, had reached a boiling point. Today, he decided to stop by and find out. The studio was quiet, except for the faint hum of the air conditioner. Sarah stood in the far corner, in front of an easel with a large photograph propped up on a stand. Ethan stood next to her, his long hair pulled back into a messy ponytail, holding a folder of prints. They were talking animatedly, oblivious to Matt. "Hey," Matt said, his voice louder than he expected. Sarah turned around, her eyes widening in surprise. "Matt, what are you doing here?" She smiled, but it quickly faded when she noticed his tense face. "Are you okay?" Ethan turned, nodding at Matt. "Hey, man, long time no see." Matt didn't answer, his gaze falling on the photograph on the easel. It was a portrait of a woman, shot in soft light, her dark hair flowing over her shoulders, her eyes looking straight into the camera. She looked strikingly like Sarah, the same tilt of her head, the same slight smile. Matt felt the blood rush to his face. This wasn't just a photo. This was proof that Ethan saw Sarah as more than just a colleague. "What is this?" Matt asked, pointing to the photograph, his voice cold. Sarah looked at the picture, then at Matt. "This is one of Ethan's pieces for the exhibition. It's beautiful, isn't it?" "Beautiful?" Matt stepped closer, his fists clenching. "It's you, Sarah. That's you in the photo." Ethan frowned, exchanging a glance with Sarah. "Hey, man, it's just a portrait. I was inspired by a lot of people, but it's not." "Don't lie," Matt interrupted, his voice growing louder. "It's her face. Do you think I'm blind?" "Matt, calm down," Sarah said, her tone sharp. "It's just a photo. Ethan used a model, and yes, she looks like me, but she's not me." "A model?" Matt snorted, looking at Ethan. "You seriously expect me to believe that? I've seen you guys talking, laughing. This isn't just a job." Sarah took a step toward him, her eyes narrowing. "Matt, are you serious? This is my studio. I work here. Ethan is a photographer. We're putting together an exhibition. What are you even talking about?" Matt felt anger welling up inside him. He remembered Catherine, her lies, her smiles as she hid her betrayal from her father. "I'm telling you that you're lying," he said, raising his voice. "You're with him every night, Sarah. And at home? At home, you barely talk to me." "Because I'm busy," Sarah nearly screamed. "I have an exhibition in 3 days, and I'm drowning in work. You can't just barge in and accuse me of something that isn't true." Ethan held up his hands, backing away. "Look, I don't want to get into this. Matt, it's really just a photo. I take pictures of people, that's my job." Take that picture off the exhibit," Matt said, his voice firm, almost threatening. He stepped up to the easel, picked up the photograph, and ripped it in half with force. The paper cracked, and the pieces fell to the floor. Sarah gasped, her face turning pale. "Matt, what are you doing? That was part of the exhibit." "I don't care," he said, throwing the scraps on the floor. "I don't want this hanging here, and you know why." Ethan shook his head, annoyance etched on his face. "Dude, you're overdoing it. This is just art." "Just art?" Matt turned to him, his fists clenched. "You think I don't see the way you look at her? I'm not an idiot." "Matt, stop!" Sarah stepped between them, her voice shaking with anger. "You're being a psycho. Go away, we'll talk later." Matt looked at her, his breathing heavy. He wanted to say something else, but instead he turned and walked out, slamming the door so hard the glass shook. Outside, he took a deep breath, trying to calm himself, but the anger and hurt only grew. He had seen Sarah's face in the photo, seen Ethan smiling at her, and it was too much like what he had experienced with Catherine. He couldn't let this betrayal happen again. At home, Matt threw his keys on the table and collapsed on the couch. The apartment was dark, the only light coming from the streetlights filtering through the curtains. He turned on the TV, but the sound was just in the background. His mind was on Sarah and Ethan. He knew he had reacted harshly, but he couldn't stop himself. The memory of his mother lying to his father, the guilty look in her eyes when he caught her with Paul, kept coming back. He had promised Sarah at their wedding that they would be honest with each other, but now he wasn't sure if she was keeping that promise. The door opened an hour later, and Sarah walked in. Her hair was disheveled, and her face was tense. She dropped her bag on the floor and looked at Matt, crossing her arms. "What was that, Matt?" she asked, her voice cold. "You barge into my studio, rip up a photograph, and accuse me of what? Cheating." Matt stood up, his hands shaking. What am I supposed to think, Sarah? You're always with this Ethan, laughing, touching him. And then I see this picture of you, or rather, someone who looks exactly like you. It's an accident, right? Yes, by accident. Sarah raised her voice, taking a step towards him. It was a model, Matt. Ethan takes portraits. He uses people for inspiration. Do you really think I posed for him? That I sleep with him? I don't know what to think, Matt shouted. You're barely home, Sarah. We don't talk. You're always in the studio. And when I go there, you're with him, and you're like best friends. Because we work. Sarah threw her hands up. This is my job, Matt. You knew the studio was important to me. Ethan is a photographer. His show brings me money. What do you want from me? To give up everything. I want you to be with me, Matt said, his voice quieter but still shaking. I see you with him, and it's like my mom. She was like that too, until I caught her with someone else. Sarah froze, her expression softening, but only for a second. Matt, I'm not your mom. I'm not cheating on you. Ethan's a coworker, that's all. You can't blame me for what happened to your family. Then why do you spend so much time with him? He asked, looking into her eyes. Why do you smile at him and not at me? Because I'm tired. Sarah almost screamed. I'm drowning in work, Matt. I'm trying to keep the studio afloat, and instead of supporting you, you come in and make a scene. Don't you trust me? Matt pressed his lips together, unsure of what to say. He wanted to trust, but every time he saw her with Ethan, he felt his heart clench. I'm trying, he said finally, but it's hard, Sarah. Then try harder, she snapped, grabbing her bag. I'm going to bed. I don't want to fight anymore. She went into the bedroom, closing the door. Matt remained in the living room, staring at the blank TV screen. He knew he had gone too far, but he couldn't stop himself. His fear of betrayal, ingrained by Catherine's betrayal, was stronger than logic. He lay down on the couch, unwilling to go into the bedroom where Sarah slept, her back turned away from him. The next day, Matt left for work early to avoid another conversation. The office where he analyzed financial reports was quiet, save for the click of keyboards and the hum of the air conditioner. His colleague, Lisa, a red-haired woman in her 30s, sat at the next desk, leafing through documents. Matt, why are you so gloomy? She asked, sipping her coffee. Did you have another row with the boss? No, everything's fine with the boss, he replied, looking at the monitor. It's just a mess at home. Oh, family life, Lisa grinned. My sister is always complaining about her husband whining if she works late. Talk to Sarah, she's cool. Yeah, Matt muttered, not going into detail. He didn't want to discuss his problems with Lisa, but her words made him think. Maybe he was exaggerating, but the image of Sarah in that photo wouldn't leave his mind. Jack, now working at a nearby auto repair shop, dropped by on his lunch break and plopped down in his office chair, holding a bag of burgers. Yo, Matt, here you go, Jack said, tossing him a burger. You look like you haven't slept in a week. Thanks, Matt caught the bag. I just had a fight with Sarah yesterday. Wow, seriously, Jack raised his eyebrows as he chewed. For what reason? Because of her photographer, Matt said, unwrapping his burger but not eating. I walked into the studio and there was a picture of a woman who looked just like Sarah. I lost it, tore it up. Jack whistled. Dude, that's tough. You really think she's hooking up with him? I don't know, Matt shrugged. But she's with him all the time, and she's hardly with me. And that picture, it's like he's obsessed with her. Listen, Jack put down his burger. I'm no expert, but Sarah doesn't seem like the type to cheat. Maybe you're just overexcited. Talk to her normally, without yelling. I tried, Matt said, his voice weary. She says it's a job, but I can't believe it. After what happened to my mom. I understand, Jack nodded. But don't project this onto Sarah. Give her a chance to explain. Matt nodded, but inside he wasn't sure. He finished his burger, and Jack changed the subject, telling a story about a customer at the shop who wanted his car fixed in an hour. Matt was only half listening, his mind on Sarah and how their relationship was going grew colder. He knew he should trust her, but every time he closed his eyes, he saw her with Ethan, and it killed him. He returned home in the evening, but Sarah had already gone to the studio. There was a note on the table. "I'll be late, getting ready for the exhibition." Food in the fridge. Matt didn't read it, just lay down on the couch, staring at the ceiling. Their marriage, once full of laughter and adventure, now felt empty, and he didn't know how to fix it. He closed his eyes, feeling anger and fear mixing, pulling him into a dark hole where he was alone. Matt sat in his car, parked on the corner of Dodge Street in Omaha, looking out at the entrance to Sarah's art studio. It was around 6 in the evening in July 2012, and the air was warm, with a faint smell of asphalt from a recent rain. He was 25, and his marriage to Sarah, which had begun 4 years earlier with such hope, now seemed on the verge of collapse. Since an argument at the studio, in which he had angrily torn up a photograph that looked like Sarah's, their relationship had grown even colder. He couldn't shake the suspicion that she was too close to Ethan Cross, the photographer whose work she was exhibiting. Today, Matt had decided to follow her, to get evidence that would either confirm his fears or make him stop. He hated himself for it, but the memory of his mother, Catherine, betraying him drove him on. The studio closed at 6:30, and Matt watched as the last of the customers filed out. Sarah was inside, her silhouette flickering behind the glass as she put away papers. Ethan was with her, carrying a box of frames. They were talking, and Matt saw Sarah smile, smoothing her hair. His fingers tightened on the steering wheel, and he felt his anger rise again. He knew he should trust her, but every gesture she made with Ethan felt like a betrayal. The studio door opened and Sarah came out, holding a rolled-up tube of what was probably posters or photographs. She locked the door and walked down the street, but to Matt's surprise, she passed her car in the parking lot. Instead, she headed toward the residential area where he knew Ethan lived. Matt frowned, his heart pounding. He started the engine and drove slowly after her, keeping his distance so as not to be seen. On the corner of the street, he spotted Trevor, his old neighbor, skateboarding, listening to music on his headphones. Trevor spotted Matt's car and waved, but Matt just nodded and didn't stop. He didn't want anyone to know what he was doing. Trevor shrugged and kept going, doing a trick near the curb. Sarah turned onto a quiet street lined with low brick buildings. Matt parked around the corner and got out, following her on foot. He watched her walk up the steps to the 3-story building where he knew from previous observations that Ethan's apartment was. She stopped at the intercom, pressed a button, and said something. A second later, there was a buzz and the door opened. Sarah stepped inside, still holding the tube. Matt froze on the sidewalk, his breathing heavy. This was it, the proof he'd been dreading. She'd gone to Ethan's house, alone, at night. He felt his world crumbling, just like it had when he'd found Catherine with Paul. He turned and walked back to the car, his steps quick, almost a run. He didn't want to see her get out, didn't want to know how long she'd be there. He was crushed. He sat in the car for a few minutes, looking out at the empty street. A passing cyclist, a guy in his 20s in a bright t-shirt, glanced at him curiously, but Matt ignored him. He started the engine and drove home, feeling the pain and anger mingle in his chest. He was ready to break up, to tell Sarah it was over. But somewhere deep inside, doubt began to creep in. What if he was wrong? What if this wasn't what it seemed? He pushed the thought away, but it wouldn't go away. At home, their small apartment was dark and quiet. Matt threw his keys on the table and sat down on the couch without turning on the light. The TV was off, and he just stared into space, replaying the image of Sarah walking into Ethan's house in his head. He remembered their wedding, her smile, their promises to be honest. Had she broken them? He didn't want to believe it, but everything pointed in that direction. Half an hour later, to his surprise, the front door opened. Sarah walked in, her hair a little disheveled, and she was holding the same bag she had left with. She turned on the light and froze when she saw Matt on the couch. "Matt," she said, her voice surprised. "Why are you sitting in the dark? I thought you were working late." He looked at her, his face tense. "Where have you been?" he asked, trying to speak calmly. Sarah frowned, setting her bag down. "In the studio, and then went to see Ethan." "Why?" Matt clenched his fists, his voice colder. "To Ethan's? To his apartment? Are you serious?" Sarah froze, her eyes narrowing. "Yeah, I was there. I dropped off some of his photos he asked for the exhibit." "Matt, what's wrong? Are you starting again?" "Am I starting?" He stood up, his voice growing louder. "Sarah, I saw you go there. Do you think I don't understand what's going on? You're with him, right?" "Oh my God, Matt, no." Sarah threw her hands up, her voice shaking with exasperation. "I went to him to return his work and tell him we weren't working together anymore. Are you even listening?" Matt frowned, his anger mixed with confusion. "Not cooperating? You said his show was the main event." "I was," Sarah said, sitting down on a chair and rubbing her temples. "But I realized that he cares about me, and I don't want it to interfere with work or with you and me. I want to stop it." Matt looked at her, trying to figure out if she was lying. "You mean he's in love with you, and you just went to give him the pictures? That's it?" "Yes, Matt, that's right." Sarah looked him in the eye, her voice firm. "I didn't know he felt that way until you started suspecting me. I looked back and realized that maybe I unwittingly gave him a reason to think he had a chance. But I didn't do anything. I didn't cheat on you." Matt swallowed, his anger beginning to recede, but doubts remained. "Why didn't you tell me? Why did you just go to his house?" "Because I wanted to figure it out myself," she said, her voice quieter. "I didn't think it would take more than 10 minutes. I gave him the tube of photos, told him we weren't working together anymore, and left. Matt, I didn't want to worry you." He sat back down on the couch, his hands shaking. "You didn't want to worry? Sarah, I thought you were with him. I saw you go there, and all I could think was that you were like my mother." Sarah sighed, her face softening. "Matt, I know what you went through with Catherine, but I'm not her. I love you, and I would never hurt you. You have to trust me." Matt lowered his head, looking at his hands. He wanted to believe, but the fear of betrayal, ingrained by his mother's betrayal, was stronger. "I'm trying," he said quietly, "but it's hard. I've seen you together, your smiles, your touches, and that picture of you." "It wasn't me," Sarah interrupted, her voice firm. "And I already said it was work. But I was wrong not to notice that Ethan felt more for me. I fixed that. What more do you want?" Matt was silent, unsure of what to say. He felt guilty for spying, for his accusations, but her words sounded sincere. "I don't know," he said finally. "I just want things to go back to the way they were before." Sarah stood up and walked over to him, sitting down next to him. "Matt, I want this too. But you have to stop seeing me as the enemy. We're a team, remember?" He nodded, but didn't look at her. "I remember. Just give me time, okay?" "Okay," she said, touching his shoulder. "But I'm not leaving, Matt. We'll figure this out." She went into the bedroom, and Matt remained on the couch, staring into the darkness. He was still in pain, but her words about ending her partnership with Ethan gave him a glimmer of hope. He began to doubt his conclusions, but he wasn't ready to trust completely. He lay down, closed his eyes, and tried to sleep, but the image of Sarah entering Ethan's house was still in his mind. The next day, Matt went to work, trying to distract himself. The office, where he analyzed financial reports, was quiet. His colleague Lisa, as usual, was chatting over coffee. "Matt, why are you so tired?" she asked, leafing through the folder. "Were you hanging out with Sarah all night again?" "Not really," he replied, looking at the monitor. "I just didn't get enough sleep." "Well, that's family life," Lisa chuckled. "My husband also whines if I'm late from work. Talk to her. Everything will be fine." Matt nodded, not going into detail. He knew he had to talk to Sarah again, but he wasn't ready. Jack came by at lunchtime, bringing sandwiches from the diner. "Yo, Matt here," Jack said, tossing him the bag. "You look like you got run over by a truck. What happened again?" I had a fight with Sarah, Matt admitted, unwrapping his sandwich. I followed her, saw her go to Ethan's house. Dude, are you serious? Jack whistled. This is already spy stuff. And what, did you catch them? No, Matt shook his head. She came back half an hour later, said she was going to return his photos and break off the partnership. Said he was in love with her and she didn't want any problems. Jack chewed, looking at him. And you believe her? I want to believe, Matt said, his voice weary. But after what happened to my mom, I don't know, Jack. Listen, Jack put down his sandwich. Sarah's not like your mother. She's straightforward, you said so yourself. If she says nothing happened, maybe you should give her a chance. Matt nodded, but inside he was still struggling with doubts. He knew he should trust Sarah, but the fear of betrayal was stronger. He finished his sandwich, and Jack changed the subject, telling him about a new customer at the shop who wanted his car fixed in half a day. Matt listened, but his thoughts were on Sarah and how to bring back their former closeness. In the evening, he returned home, but Sarah was in the studio. He found a note, "I'll be back late, work. Food in the fridge. S." He didn't read it, just sat on the couch, staring into space. His latest surveillance had given him answers, but not the ones he expected. Now he had to decide how to move on, with trust or with the suspicions that were destroying their marriage. Matt sat on the couch in their downtown Omaha apartment, staring at the blank television. It was Saturday morning, and the silence in the house was deafening. He was 25, and for the past few weeks his marriage to Sarah had been on the rocks because of his suspicions about her affair with photographer Ethan Cross. She had returned home yesterday, half an hour after he'd seen her enter Ethan's apartment, and explained that she'd ended their relationship after realizing his feelings for her. Matt wanted to believe, but the fear of betrayal that had ingrained him since his mother, Catherine, had cheated on him 5 years earlier still gripped his heart. Now, sitting alone, he was beginning to realize that his jealousy wasn't just about Sarah. It was an echo of an old hurt he'd never let go of. The bedroom door creaked and Sarah came out, in her pajamas and with her dark hair disheveled. She yawned as she headed toward the kitchen, but stopped when she spotted Matt. "Are you awake yet?" she asked, her voice hoarse with sleep. "I thought you were going to sleep until lunch." "I can't sleep," Matt replied, looking at her. "Sarah, can we talk?" She frowned but nodded, sitting down on the couch next to him. "Sure. What happened?" Matt took a deep breath, his hands resting in his lap, his fingers curling nervously. "I want to apologize. For everything. For following you, for blaming you and Ethan, for not trusting." Sarah looked at him, her eyes serious. "Matt, do you really want to talk about this? Because I'm tired of fighting." "I know," he said, his voice quiet. "And I don't want to fight anymore. I realize that all this, it's not about you. It's about me, about what happened to my mother." Sarah was silent, listening. Matt continued, looking at his hands. "When I caught her with that man, she asked me not to tell Dad because he was sick, and I agreed. But I never forgave her. And that anger, it stayed with me. I saw you and Ethan laughing, working, and all I could think was that you would do the same thing she did. But you're not her, Sarah, and I was wrong to project it onto you." Sarah squeezed his hand, her eyes softening. "Matt, I know how hard it's been for you. You told me, and I understand why you're afraid, but I never meant to hurt you. I love you." "I love you too," he said, finally looking at her. "And I'm ashamed of the way I behaved. I want to make things right. I want us to be close again." Sarah smiled, her eyes shining. "I want that too, but we have to be honest, Matt. If you feel something's wrong, just say it. Don't keep it to yourself." "I promise," he said, squeezing her hand. "And you too. If I start being stupid again, tell me." "Deal," Sarah laughed, leaning toward him. "You've always been a little stubborn, but I love that." Matt wrapped his arms around her, feeling the tension that had been holding him for weeks begin to ease. They sat there for a few minutes, just holding each other. For the first time in a long time, He felt like they were a team again. "Listen," Sarah said, pulling away. "Let's not go out today. We'll order pizza, watch a stupid movie. Like before." "Sounds cool," Matt replied, smiling. "Just not Titanic again. I can't handle it." "Hey, it's a classic." Sarah nudged him with her elbow. "Okay, you choose. But I'm for comedy." They spent the morning chatting about small things: Matt's job at the financial firm, the new exhibition at Sarah's studio, the time her cat, whom they had gotten a year ago, had knocked over a flower pot again. Matt laughed as she told him these stories and felt their connection slowly mending. But deep down, he knew he had to deal not only with Sarah, but with the past as well. That evening, after pizza and an old Jim Carrey comedy, they sat on the couch, finishing their beers. Sarah rested her head on his shoulder, and Matt stared thoughtfully at the screen where the credits were rolling. "Sarah, there's something else I want to do," he said, his voice serious. She raised her head, looking at him. "What? You're serious again?" "I want to find my mother," he said, and the words came out harder than he'd expected. "I haven't spoken to her properly since that day, and I realized that my anger at her almost destroyed us. I want to ask her for forgiveness." Sarah was silent, her eyes full of warmth. "Matt, this is a big step. Are you sure you're ready?" "Not really," he admitted, rubbing his neck. "But I have to. I don't want to carry this around with me anymore, and I want you to know that I'm really trying to change." "I know," Sarah said, touching his cheek, "and I'll support you. If you want, I can help you find her. Abby probably knows where she is." Matt nodded, feeling a lump in his throat. Abby, his sister, had kept in touch with Catherine, though Matt avoided the topic. "Maybe I'll ask her," he said. "But first, I want you and me to be okay." "We're okay," Sarah said, smiling. "Or at least we're getting there. The important thing is that we talk." They hugged, and Matt felt the weight that had been weighing on him lighten. He knew that the road to reconciliation with Catherine would be difficult, but with Sarah by his side, he was willing to try. Their marriage had nearly failed because of his fears, but now he saw a chance to fix it. The next day, Matt went to work, but his mind was on Sarah and Catherine. The office where he analyzed reports was noisy. Colleagues chatted, the printer hummed. Lisa, his desk mate, noticed his thoughtful look. "Matt, why are you so dreamy?" she asked, chewing an apple. "Were you watching movies with Sarah all night again?" "Something like that," he replied, smiling. "Just a nice day." "Well, hold on to her," Lisa said, leafing through the papers. "My sister is always complaining that her husband is not a romantic, but you seem to be trying." Matt nodded, not going into detail. He was grateful for his conversation with Sarah, for her willingness to give him a chance. Jack came by at lunchtime, bringing coffee from the diner. "Yo, Matt, you're looking better," Jack said, sitting down on a chair. "Make up with Sarah?" "Yeah," Matt said, sipping his coffee. "We talked yesterday. I was an idiot, but she forgave me." "Well, I told you she was cool," Jack grinned. "Listen, we're going to the bar tonight with Kelly and Steve. Are you coming?" "Maybe," Matt said. "I'll ask Sarah. I want to spend more time with her." "That's right," Jack clapped him on the shoulder. "Don't get worked up about it anymore, okay?" Matt nodded, feeling that Jack was right. His fears had almost ruined everything, but now he was ready to work on himself. After work, he stopped by the Bean Street Cafe, where he had once met Sarah. Kevin, the barista, recognized him. "Hey, dude, are you back again?" Kevin said, pouring coffee. "I thought you'd tried all our beers by now." "Just stopping by for old time's sake," Matt replied, smiling. "Give me 2 Americanos. Sarah will be here soon." "Oh, romance," Kevin winked. "Hold on to her. She's fire." Matt nodded, taking a seat by the window. 10 minutes later, Sarah walked in, her eyes lighting up when she saw him. "Matt, are you there?" she said, sitting down across from him. "Is this a date?" "Something like that," he replied, pushing the coffee towards her. I wanted to start all over again. How are you? Okay, Sarah said, sipping her coffee. And I was thinking, let's go somewhere for the weekend. Just you and me, no studio, no job. Sounds cool, Matt said, feeling warmth in his chest. Where do you want to go? Maybe to the lake, she suggested, where we were after the wedding. Just without mosquitoes, I hope. They laughed, and Matt knew this was the beginning of their journey back to each other. He knew that finding Catherine and reconciling with her would be difficult, but with Sarah's support, he was ready. His anger at his mother had nearly destroyed his marriage, but now he saw that forgiveness was not weakness, but a step toward a new life. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even click to the next one.